Good morning, good morning. Hello. Welcome, everybody, to the Random Acts live pitch, One Swatch live pitch. I'd like to start off by congratulating you on finding the hidden gem of the festival. This is genuinely one of the best sessions there is, and I'm going to try not to ruin it. But welcome, everybody. Congratulations. I will introduce people who are on the stage with me here. So we have got Bray, who is the editor of Random Acts at Little Dot Studios, and Shaminder Nahal, who is commissioning editor for Arts, Topical and History at Channel 4. I will kick off with a little bit about what Ones to Watch is, in case anybody doesn't know. Everybody should know, though, by now, right? So it's the festival's flagship talent scheme for established professionals and emerging talent. And importantly, it's a charitable scheme. So if you did pay for your ticket to get here, thank you very much, because you are helping to support some of the amazing people that you're going to see today up on stage. So what's going to happen? One Swatch is 30 people, and out of those 30 people, 8 of them are bravely going to come up on stage and in 90 seconds pitch an idea to these two lovely people here to get a commission, a live commission. What is a Random Act? Maybe we should start with that. So what is Random Acts?
I mean, a Random Acts is many things. Random Acts The Strand dates back to 2011. It's Channel 4's premium arts strand. It's a multidisciplinary strand, so we cover animation, spoken word, dance, poetry, music videos. We do a little bit of sort of conventional narrative, but it's a very sort of small amount. A little bit of comedy, sort of sketches, that kind of thing. We go out to an audience of around 30 million a year online, and we also have a TV show, which the last episode of Series 5 went out last night at midnight. I don't suppose any of you were up that late, but
I think some of them probably were, but I don't think they were watching television.
That's hosted by Zoe Ashton, who you might know as Vod from Fresh Meat. She's been our host for 3 series now, does a bang-up job each and every time. Random Acts are generally around the 3 to 4 minute mark. We do sometimes go a little bit over that, but the idea is for them to be these sort of bold expressions of creativity, blasting onto your screens and shaking up broadcasting. I think for me, the ideal Random Act is something that I've never seen before in Random Acts or anywhere else.
So just a low bar for people to hit
yeah,
there.
easy.
Absolutely. Shaminder, why is Random Acts so important for Channel 4?
I think I can't say how important it is. It's just a huge part of what we do on the channel as a whole, but also in our arts, because it captures the spirit that we feel is so essentially Channel 4, which is that kind of wildness, sort of unfettered creativity, just being able to do something totally crazy that you wouldn't see anywhere else, like Catherine says. And there's so few opportunities now, because obviously we all, all channels want stuff that rates really well, that gets big audiences, that kind of plays to broad audiences. And this is such a rare opportunity to do things that are just, you're just doing it for the pure creativity of the idea and the execution. And I think that's so exciting. And so it means a massive amount to us. And also because it's about new talent, whether it's people who are trying this medium out for the first time. And I find it so exciting, some of the amazing things that Catherine's commissioned in the past. Some of the people have gone on to do even bigger and better and more exciting things. Like one director, Jen Nakuru, who did a Random Act in the last season, wasn't it? Was the second director of the Jay-Z and Beyonce video that they just filmed in the Louvre. And you just think, how incredible is that? And, to have a talent like that, having been part of Random Acts, is just so exciting for us. So I can't wait to hear.
Awesome. Okay, so this is how it's going to work. We're going to have 8 people who are going to come up to this lectern and they're going to pitch directly to all of us. And I know it's early in the morning, and I just want you to appreciate how brave these people are, and we're going to give them loads of energy and we're going to give them loads of applause. So let's just practice now for everybody. Like, come on. Good. I want to interrupt whatever's going on over there. Okay, I want them to be annoyed by our noise. That's going to be our mission. Okay, so without further ado, we'll bring the first one up, right? Great. I'm excited. Okay, so first of all, we have got Emmanuel Ayati, who is a freelance assistant producer.
The title of my project is The Business Consultant. Cuckooing is a form of crime in which drug dealers take over the home of a vulnerable person, usually a drug addict, in order to use it as a base for drug dealing. Often teenagers and children are also groomed and then recruited by drug dealers to operate from these bases as drug runners, putting them at a high risk of harm whilst earning a fraction of the profit that the senior drug dealers make. The term cuckooing is reasonably new, but the approach is somewhat familiar. It's no secret that big Western businesses often set their bases in locations and communities which are home to vulnerable and poor people, often who will work in unsafe conditions for an unfair fraction of the actual profit. On one hand, we have gangs using drugs to manipulate drug users and young people, and on the other hand, we have businesses using money to control the impoverished. An addict has no choice, they are victim to the drug, just as a sweatshop employee is victim to their deprivation. The drug dealer and business person share the same agenda, but for some reason only one is a criminal. My short piece sees a street gang who want to expand their business seek advice from a business consultant. With a mixture of social commentary and dark humor, I plan to highlight the parallels between gang culture and the exploitation that occurs in some of the corporate world. Thank you.
I like it. Let's keep it going. Well done, Emmanuel. Questions?
First off, hats off for going first, because obviously that's the most intimidating.
Thank you very much. Very intimidating.
I think I'd love to know a little bit more about what we're actually going to see on screen, because you've laid out the themes really clearly and you've sort of said this is what the film is about. Take us into the sort of world of the film a bit more. Like, who are we watching actors? Are you going to get an actual business consultant?
Great. I was hoping you asked that. So they will be actors, but I want it to be really real, but also dramatized. So first, I'll set off the location because I want it to really play like a part. I want it to be a character in the thing. So you've got Canary Wharf, big high-rise buildings, and then you've got the council estate, big tall blocks where you would assume that obviously the dealers and the gang will kind of operate out of. So they've both got kind of like a similar sort of, I don't know, like if you just talk about the architecture, it looks quite similar. Everyone's kind of bunched together in this place, doing their thing. And I want to kind of just, even just their work environment, I want to keep on just like using match cuts to show the parallels. You've got all the colleagues congregating around the water fountain, and then you've got all the kind of the street guys hanging around the off license. And also like, so yeah, more of, what sort of stuff do you kind of want to, like, I'm just trying to think, what do you guys want to see?
Well, maybe just a little bit about the production, like what you've made before and whether that would be the kind of thing that you know.
Yeah, so I've like developed documentaries around gangs. I've got a lot of knowledge on gangs, and I feel like, you know, I'm a natural entrepreneur. I've been interested in the business world, and I've been looking at both of these worlds, and I just keep seeing like same attitudes shared on both, but especially like obviously when it comes to some of the more like corrupt stuff, we only highlight the kind of the bad stuff about these guys and not really these guys. And I feel like if you show this parallel, it would be quite, like, it's surreal. You wouldn't really see a business consultant with a gang ever, like, talking. So, I mean, this business consultant's going to be telling them, oh, maybe, like, do it like this. And they're going to say, we already do. Maybe do it like this. We already do. But as it gets deeper and deeper, you realize there's certain strategies and methods that the business consultant's willing to do in order for them to grow their business. It's pretty bad, and it's pretty bad on their side too. So it's just, constantly like drawing their parallels. And I think I'll shoot in a sort of documentary style. I'm documentary like obs docs, but I want it to be really like surreal and quite strange. It's like they're talking to each other as if this is just a conversation that happens. And I guess we don't really see that in real life, a business consultant and a gang. Mm-hmm. But yeah. Okay.
All right.
I think it's a really clever parallel, incredibly brilliant idea. But so we'll be watching it in a documentary style, but it will feel like a drama, basically.
Yeah, it'll feel like.
Is it going to end badly?
Yeah, I think it's just going to.
Spoilers.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, so it's like as we get further, first of all, you're kind of like, what the heck is this? Like, okay, this guy's trying to help them out, but then you realize, wait, the business consultant, he's using real methods, but they're questionable. Like, even, I'm an advocate for work experience, but if you applied that same method to a gang, like, oh, let's get some young people, they're way more enthusiastic, they'll work for free, let's teach them how to do it, they could be little me's, and it's like, now, what have we got here? We're just grooming young people to maybe work for a job that's not necessarily morally right, but they'll still do it, so.
Okay, all right, I'm really sorry, we're going to have to move on, but thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Next up, we have Toby Bakari, who is a freelance AP producer.
If you build it, they will come. That's the case for a city, and that can also be the case for a simple home. This is a headline that stood out to me. It's from Vice from March 2017, and it's about the Haygate estate, which is in Elephant and Castle. And this is a bit of copy that I saw in the London Evening Standard, and it's about a place called Charlton, which is down the road from the Haygate, and it happens to be where I grew up. So, if I can set the scene, it's a black and white hangar-style environment, and a young man walks in, and he's got hammer, nails, wood, and enthusiasm, and he starts to build his dream home. He steps back. He's an older man now, but he's put a lot of time and effort into it, and he's really proud of it. A bit like Frank Ocean does here in his visual album for Endless. He puts a lot of care and attention into every aspect of it. But then someone else comes along and says, I like what you've done there. I'm going to build something bigger. It's going to be bricks and mortar. It's going to be a bit of drilling, but we'll be fine. They rub along okay. Then another group of people come along, 4 to 6, and they've got concrete mixers and drills, and they've got a lot of tools, and they're going to build an even bigger version of this small wooden house. And they don't think to ask about the man that's already there, and what does he like, and what does he think. And so they actually end up building a bigger version and trampling over his place. And all he has to do now is pick through the possessions of his home and take a few prized things and kind of leave as the bigger thing is there. And while we're seeing that churn, we would kind of hear an audio bed of people who might be from the Haygate estate in South London, or they might be from Cherry Orchard in Charlton, or they might be from Sheffield, Manchester, Glasgow. But what they would have in common, the people that we would hear from, is that they have all experienced.
All right, Toby, that's 90 seconds. Sorry.
That's all right.
It's very strict.
That's all right.
I'm a hard taskmaster. I'm sorry. So, questions from you guys?
Well, I loved how detailed you were about what we're going to see and sort of like really kind of starting to lay that out. I think I've got a clear idea of what I would be looking at. Could you tell me a bit more about you and why you would make this and why you're the right person?
Like I said, so I'm from South London, and it's a part of the world where it's a big city and lots of different people come and want to live in London, and that's great. But then there are communities that are there and existing. And I kind of have lived a little bit in Hackney as well, and that's probably a place of the world that's had more gentrification than Charlton in South East London. Mm-hmm. But they're both...
Sorry, and as a filmmaker...
Oh, sorry. Well, my background is like news and current affairs, so I'm interested in what's happening in the world and the impact of kind of politics, and it's a big passion of mine. And I think housing is like a big issue, so I like to tackle the kind of big social issues in the world. And then as a filmmaker, I kind of like to try and just find a different way of doing the most important stories and try and be as visual as possible. And so I think you needn't have to do things the way that things are always done, and if I can approach those serious issues in new ways, then that's what I like to do.
It sounds like you'd be staging something quite different to what you might have filmed on a news report.
Yes.
Seen his news report.
In a way, I think there's a kind of quite a clear metaphor here, but also I've done that before, where it's kind of looked at those kind of very serious issues. So I've done a bit working for Channel 4 News, and you can kind of have a bit of free rein to kind of do something different for a news report, and like kind of Random Acts is a kind of chance to do that slightly bigger.
I didn't quite get what happens at the end.
So at the end, because these bigger houses are being built next to this small wooden house with drills and what have you, then they kind of collapse this fragile wooden structure. And as we're kind of seeing that, we're hearing people who have lived in places like the Haygate, which have kind of experienced, which is an estate in South London where 2,000 people lived, and then they got sold this idea of regeneration, and they had to move out. And I've spoken to some of them, and they have said how they feel displaced. So what we would be hearing is what they kind of feel like, what it feels like to be displaced and to have to move somewhere because someone else comes along.
Great. Any more questions? No? Great. Toby, thank you so much. All right. So next up we have Julie Cumming, who is a script editor from BBC Studios.
In a world where love has become as expendable as swiping left or right, my pitch is a visual arts piece depicting unconditional love, inspired by the greatest love story of the 1950s. Elizabeth Taylor was always in love with fellow actor Montgomery Clift. On the eve of her weddings, Liz begged Monty to give her a reason not to go through with the marriages, but he couldn't. He was gay. In spite of this, her love and loyalty towards him never wavered, and on May 12, 1956, something happened that epitomises their relationship. On driving home after a dinner party at Liz's house, Monty was in a terrible accident. He drove into a utility pole. Liz climbed to the car's smashed back window and crawled over the blooded seats. She reached Monty, now barely recognisable, and took his broken body in her arms as his blood soaked into her white evening dress. My piece will be a nod to their relationship. We'll see a man and a woman in isolated moments. When played one after the other, will create their story and explain the pain Elizabeth felt on the road that night. Their first meeting at a premiere, her begging him to marry her, Liz consoling Monty through his drug problems, all building towards the horror of the crash. It'll be filmed like an old Hollywood movie, in soft focus, grainy footage and with its own romantic score. I want the audience to understand what Elizabeth felt, the rawness of rejection and her loyalty in spite of that, to emotionally experience the unconditional love one person can have for another, something that seems to only exist in classic Hollywood movies. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. I don't know if you brought tissues for everybody.
I know I should have, I'm sorry.
Okay. Any questions from you guys?
Well, I love the idea. You say it would be filmed like an old Hollywood movie. I mean, those tend to cost a bit more per minute than random acts. How are you going to...
I think it would be a low-budget version of that. Probably relying quite heavily on kind of the smaller techniques we can do with the camera, so things like soft focus, or putting a filter on something in the edit to make things feel kind of old and authentic. So it would be... I think it's more... For me, it's more about creating the atmosphere of the old Hollywood movie and relying on the kind of tropes of that. So the romantic score is a really important part of that because it feels authentically that type of genre. So I think it's more relying on that and the visuals, so I would style it like the 50s, so that would also help. So it's what I could do within the budget, obviously, because I'm aware I'm not shooting something massive.
Well, it's a captivating idea, but often random acts have something, they're either sort of quite edgy and crazy, or they have something to sort of say about today's world. What is it about this idea that captivates you but you feel will speak to the audience as something that's sort of relevant today?
For me, it's about, I feel like relationships today are very different from how they were back then, and I think that's what I was trying to get across with this idea, is that because of things like dating apps now, it's almost like there's too much choice, and I think people aren't as willing to invest or work at a relationship when it feels like, oh, well, look, Tinder says there's 300 other people in my area who might want to date me, so I'll just patch this person and go for that. So it's that kind of love for somebody. Liz Taylor could never be with Monty Clift, but she never gave up on it. And I think that's something that is timeless. So it speaks to now, but it's a kind of international message, and it's also with things like the success of Mamma Mia 2, the genre's come back, rom-coms are still big, it's still an important thing that people are interested in. So I think for me it's about spreading that message of like investing in the people that we love, if that makes sense.
Just really quickly, would we know from watching the film without the sort of preamble about Elizabeth Taylor and Montgomery Clift that it was to do with them, or is that sort of...
No, I might drop hints, but for copyright reasons, obviously, I would avoid clearly identifying who they are, but it was just, I felt it was important to explain the inspiration behind the story for you guys.
Lovely, thanks so much.
Thanks, thank you.
I love that we've gone from Frank Ocean to Mamma Mia 2. I can't wait to see where we go next. So next, please welcome onto the stage Lisa Gifford, who is a freelance writer.
So, 99% of who you are is invisible and untouchable. This was said to me in a coffee shop, right here, where I used to work in Tottenham. In fact, when I started writing television, I was still working in this coffee shop. When I worked in service jobs, which I did for a really long time, there was hundreds of people I met that were like me, that there was something else going on inside. They were working these jobs. They're the people who make your bread in the morning, they pour your coffee, they mix your drinks. But there's something else inside. These are the people who dream about becoming an artist or a poet or a counsellor. So they're working day-to-day jobs, they can make this happen. My random acts would focus on those people. It centres around Sekai Lynch, who is a poet who lives in Tottenham, who I actually met while working in a coffee shop. Seikai's poetry talks about how we try to present ourselves to the world and what we want to do with ourselves. So he would walk through the coffee shop, and as he does, we meet all these characters. We meet the barista, who's actually the artist who goes out to Africa to paint pictures of women who've been raped and murdered. And as he does, the camera would zoom in and we would have a projection of that person's work. Meanwhile, all the customers around are completely oblivious because all they see you as is the person who's there to service them. And then towards the end, you've got that image as the customers suddenly start to realise there's more going on around them. So my random acts, in a nutshell, is about social mobility.
Thank you, Lisa.
Great pitching style, thank you. I suppose I'd like to ask about whether you think that there's a danger that this could imply that someone who likes working in a bakery or likes working as a barista but doesn't secretly dream of being an artist, like, is it sort of creating a divide between those two people and privileging the artist?
I hope not, because I think what I would like to do is show the artistry behind those jobs. I mean, I love working as a barista, and to be honest, I still occasionally go and do the odd shift because I love it and I think there's an art form to it, and it's actually a really hard art form to learn. And like making cocktails is a super hard art form to learn. So I wanted to use like macro shots, slow motion to show the actual artistry behind that and the really hard work that goes into it. And in my experience, it's people who can learn to do those things and learn to do them well often do have other creative careers. But no, I mean, I think a lot of people who do those careers really do have other things going on, but I think I also want to concentrate on the beauty of those small, what people call menial jobs, which are not menial jobs, but there is a beauty in them. So hopefully I could portray that as well.
So it's about finding the things in common between like a creative career and those other
Yeah, and just encouraging people, I think, not to look through those people and to actually see them and see who they are and what they're doing, and not just... And because I think we all do it every day, we go out and we buy our coffee like in Starbucks or whatever, and you just look through that person who gives it to you and actually just make eye contact and just for that second, what is going on for that person? Who are they? You know, what's going on inside?
And would you look at the sort of the hidden jobs that I'm remembering a job I had putting the scratch cards inside magazines. It was like no kind of, you're in a warehouse, there's no customer interaction. Would it be about the customer facing people? Or?
It's more about customer facing people because of the, I want to film it in the coffee shop and have that idea. But I also would like to use the baker who's working in the kitchen, for example. So that's less of a customer facing thing, but it's more about what the different jobs that go on in service and what they actually mean, because that's more like personal to me. So.
It's a really interesting idea. It reminds me a bit of this Will Self short story that is where there's a character in a restaurant and all the waiters are actually sort of Dostoevsky. And it's, but so that, I think that idea is really interesting that we should face, which is sort of the kind of inner soul behind us all. But the one bit I didn't quite understand was how are you going to visually show us? Can you just explain that again? How are you going to visually show us these inner lives?
Okay, so you've got the people, say for example, the person working at the coffee machine, so you've got the nice shots of the coffee machine and everything else, but then there's a projection that comes up, so obviously something we would film in a studio of that person's other life. So, for example, the artist, Nat, is a real person. These would all be real people, they wouldn't be actors, they'd all be real people. You would actually have her painting and that would be projected over. So as she's working at the coffee machine, and it's all very white behind, you would see the projection over that of her doing her other life and what her other life is.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. Can you believe it? We're halfway through already. 4 great pitches, another 4 great ones to come. This is like, keep that energy going. I'm loving it. I'm feeding off it. So next up, we have got Geeta Mitra, who is BBC Three YouTube executive.
Here has seen sign language to convey words? Hands up. Who here has seen sign language to convey music? Good. Music is the heartbeat of life. Can you imagine your world without music? They say it's the universal language. But is it? There are 9 million people who are hard of hearing in the UK. It's the 3rd most common disability. Luckily, there is a new form of sign language emerging which conveys the feeling of music, not just the words. And here's an example.
I go hard in the motherfucking paint, nigga. Please take it. What the fuck you taking?
I see a little silhouette of a man. Scaramouche, will you do the fandango? Thunderbolt and lightning, very, very frightening. Galileo.
This new language uniquely embodies the spirit and the sound of each genre. Using this language, I want to bring to life and celebrate the last 80 years of music. Through each decade by the genre that defined it, it will be brought together by a slick mixed bed of music and shot simply in a studio. From 50s rock and roll to 80s hip-hop to the grime of today, see rather than hear how music has evolved over time. Let's make music a truly universal language.
Oh, bang on. Well done, Gita.
Such a great topic. I've never been pitched that before, which is actually really rare with Random Acts. I think one of the commonest reasons to turn something down is just because you've sort of had so many people saying, I want to do something about this subject. So that's really, really exciting. Do you have sort of access to people in the world of music sign language?
Not right now, but I can find access. I personally just find it a really beautiful language, and it's people say they want to learn different languages. It's always been the language that I've wanted to learn because I just think it's so beautiful to look at. But yeah, this is the reason why I was so excited about doing this pitch for this, because it's something that I've wanted to work with for such a long time. So it's finally been a chance to actually get involved in it and do something with it.
Do you have a particular person in mind who would be the person who was doing the thing, or would be lots of different people?
It would be lots of different people. I think traditionally you see the people you see on TV are middle class, slightly older. I'd love to see some younger people doing sign language, also some older people. Ideally in my head I had that each genre of music or each decade, it'd be done by the people who love and enjoy that music and maybe came from that time. So as the video goes on, it gets younger or different, and there's evolution even in the people who are listening to the music. So you see how people have evolved as well.
Something we sort of see sometimes with the performance genre Random Acts is that when they work the best, they've really thought about how the camera is integrated into the performance. It's not just you've sort of stuck a camera there and then someone stands in front of it and does their performance, unless that's appropriate to the genre. Have you thought about that side of it, that sort of using the screen as a canvas part of our piece?
Yeah, I kind of want the camera just to be stuck on and just straight on them, and I think they should be front and centre, and like their movement, their actions, their body language, their expressions, you should be able to see it. So I think you don't want to distract away from that and just keep it on them.
Thanks.
Great, perfect. Thanks, Gita. Okay, next up we have Sophia Morphew, who is a freelance script editor.
This is a hydrogen atom, and your bodies are 9.5% hydrogen, and I've been unreliably informed that when you enter an MRI chamber, this hydrogen is changed on a quantum level, so you're not quite the same person when you come out as when you went in, and this is what I want to explore in my film as a woman goes on a journey from an MRI chamber through an Arcadian dreamscape, pursuing that most sort of natural symbol of freedom, the white horse. This is Joseph, by the way, and this is Joseph's musculoskeletal system, because everything in this natural paradise is stripped down to its essence and destroyed and medicalised and renewed. As we go on a journey to explore the tension between the coldly scientific view of our body and the natural world and the meditative and the private and the dreamlike, and the point where those dovetail. Where science starts to look an awful lot like magic, and where on some level you become a new person. I mean, even if only on a cellular level.
Thanks, Sophia.
I'm going to ask the same question that I asked Emmanuel. What are we actually sort of seeing on a sort of stage by stage? Like when you talk about we're seeing an Arcadia, are we seeing real wood that you're in there with a camera? And
I mean, it's quite. I mean, in that sense, it is quite literal. But what I would like to do is find a way of sort of mussing up those images, maybe overlaying some animation over what we've seen, just to make it, you know, to pull up that contrast between the hyper real and the hyper not real. You know, focusing in on close-ups of the natural world, of, you know, bacteria perhaps, of maybe overlaying images that could come from an MRI chamber, so the insides of things. So it is, you know, in one sense very literal. It is, as you'd see in a drama, woman goes into chamber, wood, horse, but then sort of playing with those images and scuffing them up and deconstructing them slightly so that it becomes something that's a bit odder and a bit weirder.
And how would we understand the science stuff, like all the stuff about hydrogen and all of that? Would there be voiceover or
yes,
text?
I'd like to use a voiceover from the protagonist, quote on to quote, and I'd also like to use one of the things when I've had MRIs, I was very struck by the soundscape of them. And a lot of people find it quite unpleasant, but I almost found it like a sort of sound bath or a trip to a techno night. Like I'd quite like, and I'd like to bring that in and use sort of voiceover with those very strange, unearthly magnetic sounds and overlay that over the top.
You've made me want to get an MRI scan.
Lie down,
wow.
No one talks to you and they play sounds at you. It's brilliant. Thoroughly
Great. MRIs all round?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks Sophia. All right, we're on to our penultimate pitch, and it's going to come from Lorraine O'Donovan, who is a freelance DV director.
So I am terrified of blood, hospitals, operations, and just generally the inside of human bodies. I'd like to see bodies as doctors and surgeons do, as complicated, beautiful designs enhanced by their creativity. Autopsy is a celebration of doctors as the artists they are in a theatre of their own. A masked doctor walks into an operating room. A white sheet covers what appears to be a body lying on a metal table. The doctor pulls the sheet away and peers at the lifeless corpse. She prepares. She puts on gloves and carefully selects from a tray of sharp instruments. The doctor lifts up the body's hands and scrapes underneath the fingernails, wiping the instrument after each scrape. Every wipe leaves a trail of glitter on the cloth. Next, she makes a cut to the torso. Pastel pink liquid oozes from the incision. She removes bulging coloured balloons from inside the stomach, and as she bursts one over the body, confetti explodes onto the table. Another is filled with pink glittery dust, the next a paint bomb. Each cut or incision releases more life and colour until the space around the body is completely transformed. A kaleidoscope of paint, petals, coloured powder and live butterflies dance proudly around the room. When the doctor is finished, she steps back to admire her work, the body's eyes open. Autopsy will be shot mostly in close-up, with occasional wides which will reveal the room gradually transforming. The way the film is shot will change as it evolves, starting with wide-angle lenses to accentuate the coolness of the room, and moving to close primes with a dreamlike blur, picking up on details in colour and light. Autopsy is an ode to medical staff who use...
That's it. Sorry, Lorraine. 90 seconds. Questions?
I so want to see the film you're talking about. It sounds so cool. I suppose the bit of my brain when you're sort of making a decision around a commission like this is, can you pull it off? Will you be able to sort of achieve the level of production value that it would absolutely need to kind of look cool and see everything that you're talking about? So could you talk me through a bit about maybe your experience, or if you don't have experience, like what you would do to sort of reach out to people who could realise the effects and all of that?
Sure. So first of all, I think one of the reasons why I want to shoot it kind of in wides to begin with, and then going closer into close-ups and getting more kind of dreamy, is because that means that we can kind of cheat slightly with, detail and shots, basically. But also, my boyfriend is a model maker and prop maker, and he's promised me that he'll make me a dead body, or bits of dead body.
That's love.
So it's not the first weird thing he's promised to do for me. And I went to art college with a group of model makers and prop makers, and they have a company and they make prosthetics and visual effects for film. So I've spoken to them and they can do little bits and pieces as well for this. But all the body parts would be in close-up, so you're never at any point going to see kind of some big, creation.
When you started, you said, I want to see surgery as a surgeon does.
Yeah.
And then it turned into this other really different thing, which
Yeah.
something that surgeons won't ever see. So,
Yeah.
and then I missed the end thought. So I was just quite fascinated by, were you saying it's going to be an ode to the...
Yeah, an ode
brilliance
to
of
doctors
the-
who use our bodies as an art canvas. So I guess it's not exactly literally how they see bodies, but when they walk into an operating theatre, they are doing something really intricate and I think really creative and artistic. And I think when you hear about doctors, when you see about these kind of things in the media, it's often quite grimy and it's often a little bit cold and sterile. And I just like the idea of actually having fun with it and making it beautiful and I guess taking it into a more spiritual place.
Okay.
Great.
Great. Thanks, Lorraine. Okay, we've made it to the last one. I will need to give an extra big applause because she's been sitting waiting through everybody else. So this is Sophie Perrins, freelance assistant producer.
This is a film about a man who has taken the most ordinary household item, a can of baked beans, and created his own extraordinary reality. I'm going to take you to where he lives, Port Talbot. Wales has seen the largest rise in unemployment of all UK nations. Port Talbot is one of the most deprived communities in the UK, with nearly a quarter of people living in poverty. Barry was made redundant from his IT job and spent months visiting the job centre. He felt he was facing a bleak future. But Barry created Captain Beanie and believes immersing himself in this alter ego pulled him out of his depression. This film explores escapism. Soft, dreamlike visuals of Captain Beanie in his orange living room are cut against a day in the life, taking place in a heightened reality. Barry's voiceover will provide a narration, telling us about his former life and how having an alter ego has transformed his world. Throughout his day, Captain Beanie is completely juxtaposed to his hyper-normal surroundings. A small, mundane town, completely inhabited by people partaking in the monotony of daily life. Everything is utterly ordinary. Using desaturated and static shots, Captain Beanie creates a splash of colour in an otherwise gloomy colour palette of a post-industrial town. Captain Beanie, with his cape flowing behind him, would take us past closed high street stores and factories in disrepair. The too bland and too static surroundings create an uneasy atmosphere, but Captain Beanie is living in a self-made utopia. To some, he is simply eccentric, but having completely transcended his situation, his is a story of success against the odds.
Thank you very much. Are you hungry?
So hungry. And it's a lot of fun in a professional context to be able to say the words, do you have access to Captain Beanie?
I do. I've actually known him for a few years. I didn't kind of give too much of a kind of talk into his background and his life before he became Captain Beanie, but there was a lot going on for him aside from just being made redundant, and I hope that his interview, because I know him, can actually be sort of quite candid and very personal, and hopefully will then really give kind of context on why he did what he did.
I feel like I'm actually in a random act now because I didn't think he was real. Is he really real?
He's a real man who lives in Port Talbot.
And that photo of him in the bath
that is his
real?
house.
Okay.
Yes.
I thought you had made this up.
I wish I had. So Captain Beanie now is, this alter ego he has is something he jumps into for, it's his income, it's his community, it's who he is. But at the beginning, it started out as pure escape, and he needed something to become something different. So what it became and what it started out as were sort of two different things for him.
And has he got a family, or does he live on his own?
He lives on his own in a council estate in Port Talbot.
And again, it risks sounding facetious because the man's called Captain Beanie, but like, have you thought about sort of working with, he sounds like he could be a vulnerable contributor if you sort of think about that side.
So yeah, definitely. And I think that, so my background is documentary. And so I want this to be sort of very sensitive, and I never want at any point you to be sort of laughing at him. You know, in this film, he is 100% winning. You know, he has, in a place where, you know, there isn't much social mobility, and when he did have that moment of unemployment, it was kind of like a sink or swim, and he found a really alternative way to completely succeed. And now he is a very happy, healthy man who completely understands that his alter ego is not who he is, but, you know, it came from a place of, how am I going to survive and what am I going to do?
Thanks.
Great. All right, so I think we can all agree that those of us that weren't up on stage were very pleased that we didn't have to do that. That was excellent. It's so hard to do that pitch in 90 seconds. And I just think that you're in a privileged position now, if you're in the audience. You've just seen some of like the future talent of this industry. So I want you to remember these names: Emmanuel Aeti, Toby Bakari, Julie Cumming, Lisa Gifford, Gita Mitra, Sophia Morphew, Lorraine O'Donovan and Sophie Perrins. Well done, everybody. And the winning, you're not going to find out today, delayed gratification. The winner will be announced during the Edinburgh TV Festival Awards, be announced by Frank Skinner tomorrow, starting at 4:30 in the Pentland. It's going to be the highlight. We're all going to be there, and I want all of those cheers magnified by 100. Now, to finish with, we've got a really special treat. Get practicing. Get practicing. We've got a really special treat. This is a TV festival exclusive and world premiere of last year's winner. So last year's winner was a film called Deep Breath, which was pitched by Oliver Martin. So I want you to, maybe Catherine, you can talk about what stood out to you about that pitch and why you liked it.
Sure. So cast my mind back. Ollie came on stage. He was very charismatic, very credible. He sort of answered all of our questions in a kind of like non-defensive, thoughtful way, and he seemed like someone who would be really responsive to the sort of development process and sort of thinking about taking on board notes. And he had a background at BBC Studios, I think, working in sort of Planet Earth YouTube originals commissioning, that suggested that he could pull off his idea, which was to film an underwater freediver for 3 minutes holding her breath. The other thing that I really liked about that was that it felt like it was absolutely tailored to the runtime of a random act in this very natural way. Like, that's the maximum amount of time that this freediver could hold her breath. So it felt like there was this sort of something inherent to the pitch that was geared to the brief in a very specific and sort of biological sense almost.
That was intense.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone tried to hold their breath while they were watching it. I've not made it to the end yet.
Wow. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. That was so much fun. I want to thank Channel 4, I want to thank Random Acts, the TV Festival Talent Schemes, and of course, everybody who pitched. Let's find out the winner tomorrow, but well done, everybody.